Commission meeting to order. Let the record reflect it is Thursday, July 16th, 2020 at 7 p.m. As a preliminary matter, before we get started, I would like to ask anyone joining us remotely, please be patient and respectful as we navigate this meeting remotely. I would appreciate it if you mute your phones as well. Thank you. For those wishing to follow along with the PowerPoint, you are encouraged to access the meeting through the Tinley Park television live streaming on YouTube. It is my understanding that all members and staff present have checked in on the conference line and we can begin our meeting. At this time, allow me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Please note, throughout the meeting, we expect to have other individuals joining us via phone pertaining to specific agenda items. Thank you in advance, again, for your patience and cooperation throughout tonight's Plan Commission meeting, which is convening remotely via conference call. This open meeting of the Village of Tinley Park is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Pritzker's Executive Order 2020-07, issued on March 16, 2020, which suspends the Open Meetings Act provisions relating to in-person attendance by members of a public body. Specifically, the Governor's Order 1 suspends the requirement in Section 2.01 that members of a public body must be physically present, and number 2, suspends the limitations in Section 7 on when remote participation is allowed. The OMA, Open Meetings Act, requires public bodies to allow for public comment. Therefore, this meeting will include public comment via the established protocol. Even if members of the public do not provide comment, participants are advised that people may be listening who do not provide comment, and those people are not required to identify themselves. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by web or audio conference. All of the materials for this meeting are available on the Village's website, and we recommend the members and the public to follow the agenda as posted. The meeting is also live streamed through the Tinley Park television on YouTube, as I mentioned previously. Before turning on to the first item on the agenda, allow me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. As chairperson, I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will go down the line of the members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold your comments until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone when you're not speaking, and also start your comment with your name for identification. If members wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through me, taking care first to identify yourself and then make your request. At this time, I'd like the Commission Secretary to please take the roll call.
Manny?
Present.
Gaskell? Gaskell?
I'm sorry, present.
Vic?
Present.
Gatto?
Here.
Aitchison?
Here.
West?
Present.
Engel? Chairman Gray?
Present. Okay, we have a quorum. This is Chairman Gray. Staff, are there any communications for the Commission?
No, there's not.
No communication.
Okay.
No, there's not. Sorry.
Okay, hearing none. This is Chairman Gray again. Let us now begin with the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the July 2nd, 2020 meeting?
This is Commissioner Gatto, so moved. This is Commissioner West, a second.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Gatto, seconded by Commissioner West. This is Commissioner Gray, Chairman Gray. I will ask for a voice vote. Are there any opposed to this motion? Hearing none, the motion is carried. Okay, this evening we have a workshop regarding the redevelopment of Tinley Park Plaza, located at 15917 to 16037 South Harlem Avenue. The project will include the demolition of the 87,000 square feet of existing building on the northern portion of the center and the construction of the core and shell of approximately 66,600 square feet for retail uses and general improvements to the inline tenants, including facade improvements, landscaping, and parking lot improvements. Staff, could you please make your presentation at this time?
Thank you, Chairman. We're excited about presenting this project this evening. Most of you know where this is located on the Harlem Avenue commercial corridor. It is the Tinley Park Plaza. And the applicants are on the line this evening, and they're here to help us present to you the redevelopment of the plaza, at least the second phase of it. The building, or the entire plaza, was built in 1974, and it comprises 22 acres. In total, there is approximately 248 square feet. And as most of you know, the project, could you advance the slide, please? The center is somewhat antiquated in terms of its architecture and somewhat of its design. They have been experiencing increased vacancy rates, upwards of 20%, certainly not helped out with COVID. They're before you this evening with a proposal for a special use for a planned unit development, site plan approval, with some exceptions related to the bulk regulations and building materials that we'll go through later. I think my streaming is slow, so I'm assuming whenever I say advance, you guys are handling that okay?
Yes.
Mine isn't advancing. Commissioner Gaskill, mine isn't advancing.
Okay.
Existing
Please
site.
advance. There you go. Yeah, executive summary. Okay. I'll read off the title if that helps of each one, but I don't see it on mine. As I mentioned, the plaza, let's move the slide to existing site and phasing. There are 3 phases to the project. The first we've already have been involved in with phase 1, that was the outlot. That was approved back in 2015. Very nice development, and included revisions to that north parking lot north of the development. Phase 2 is the one that we're contemplating now, and that comprises a little more than 100,000 square feet, and the demolition of 87,000 square feet, with reconstruction of 67,000 square feet that will include a new soft goods retailer and grocery store. If we could advance the slide. Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind. Don't, not yet. And then those of you that are pretty familiar with the plaza, it handles the very northern tip of the plaza on down to right where Route 21 was, just north of Waltz. Phase 3 will be everything from that point south, and that is scheduled to begin subsequently to the occupancy of the phase 1. So looking to begin construction in the fall of 2020 and occupancy in 2021. Next slide, please, on zoning. The property is currently zoned B2. What's a little interesting after we did some research is that the maps since 1977 have indicated this property as a planned unit development, although we could not find any evidence of that PUD ever being adopted. Unfortunately, we found a couple other shopping centers in the community that were erroneously designated as a PUD on the maps. And therefore, as we come across these developments, we want to kind of clean house a little bit, and because there's more than one structure on these parcels, that pushes us into a PUD. So one of the proposals, as part of the application, we're going to be looking at a designation of a special use for a PUD. But unlike a new construction where we're going to get into much more of the development and site planning, that's going to be restricted on this parcel because we're really looking just at a renovation of an existing site. As the map indicates, the property in the immediate area north and to the east is B2. Across the street, across west of Harlem Avenue, we have the B3, Community or General Business and Commercial District. South of that is Park Place, that's also a B3. Directly south of this center is the B4, and there's a medical facility there. Let's move on to the site plan. This exhibit helps to clarify the portion of the building that's going to be demolished. Hopefully that's up in front of you right now. It's not caught up on mine. And as the aerial shows, the area, right where you see the area, the arrow, so the red arrow, everything from there up to Route 21 is what's being demolished. That area is some of you remember where the Women's Workout World was in TJ Maxx. So that area is being demolished, and the new construction, when you look at the plan below that, you'll see that the facade or the west facade is moved back. And this provides for a larger parking field and a much more, straight line access to the center. Before, it was kind of circuitous going around that bump out to the south. So I think this makes for a much cleaner access way to the development. Let's go to the next slide, please. This is something that was just sent to me just prior to the meeting. And if you can see it, it wasn't in your packet, but the developer put this together, and I think it's kind of interesting. You can see the existing aerial underneath, and then the yellow highlighted area is the new construction. Hopefully that makes it a little clearer. I think it was a little difficult at first to understand what area is being demolished and what the reconstruction is. What really changes the most on this project in terms of site planning is the parking field. And this parking field that is between the two access ways off of Harlem Avenue. Right now, it's all diagonal one-way parking. What they have done is taken the four north aisles and kept those as diagonal, but the main parking field in front of the soft goods stores and the grocer will be traditional perpendicular parking. What I also really like about the change in this design is it brought some parking right up to the building, right perpendicular to building, kind of the traditional downtown type of layout you would see, or as I mentioned in the report, some of the newer lifestyle centers like Bolingbrook Promenade, where you bring the parking right up to the front door of the retailer. This really provides for, I think, a little bit more intimate scale, pedestrian scale. It certainly makes for safer access from the accessible parking spaces. So I think this was a real good addition. It also sort of helps with some traffic calming, which we want to make sure we have safe movement through the parking field. So I think this certainly was a good improvement to the development. One of the issues related to site plan that we need to discuss this evening, and let's go to the next slide, please, is, well, the next slide, actually, what I want to show you there is just where the crosswalks are. You'll see the arrows that I just discussed with the perpendicular parking, and then the circled areas are the crosswalks for safe crossing of that main aisle across the front of the buildings. Let's go to the next slide, please. What this slide is illustrating is that the main aisles actually exceed our minimum aisle width at 26.5 feet. Our aisle requirements are 26. The rest of the aisles are at 24, or in the case of the diagonal, they're at 18. This is our code, and I know we've all discussed this several times on some other projects. I have to say that Tinley Park's aisle width is probably on the higher side than most communities. It certainly makes for nice, convenient, perpendicular parking. But as we see vehicles somewhat downsized and get a little bit smaller, I think we can certainly live with the 24-foot wide aisles. We have them just across the street at Sam's Club. We recently approved them at the Marriott hotels. And actually, the 2015 approval of the Brixmore Outlet had some 24-foot wide aisles. So this is the first item on the open item list where we need to recognize the exception to village code. And if that is supported, we'll include that in the special use, the PUD special use. Let's move on to the next slide, please. The north parking lot at the north end of the center, and this actually was revised as part of the outlet development. But after that development, they've experienced some problems with the delivery truck to the Waltz grocery store. You can see from the pictures here that they have a habit of running over the corners, which results in really unsightly landscape islands. So the developers certainly want to try and take care of this issue going forward with the new grocer. The first proposal that was provided, as you can see in the bottom half of that slide, you have the existing layout with a 26-foot wide aisle, that east-west aisle that heads from the Burlington Coat Factory parking lot west to the Noodles and Company and Blaze Pizza outlet center. And then you see to the right of that their proposal, and that is for a 60-foot wide aisle. And my first review of this, I was very concerned about the width of that aisle, especially, as it transitions to a 26-foot wide aisle. I certainly understood the need to correct the problem with the wheel drag of the truck. But the next slide, please. I've been working with their engineers, and you can see from the red circle, that was my biggest concern, where the island, the landscape island on the north side is pushed back, and it's done so to accommodate the wheel drag, but it makes for a very awkward ingress-egress to the parking lot. So, we've been working up to the last minute, and I can see the engineers on Brixmore's side having a smile on their face because some of this stuff has been happening very late at night and early in the morning between them and myself. But the plan on the right-hand side is something that staff recommended, and I think they've taken it into consideration. I'm not sure this is going to be the final rendition. I spoke to one of the engineers this afternoon, and we talked about some other possibilities because we want to make some more space for some dumpsters. But at the very minimum, we want to make sure that while we're addressing the wheel drag and the need for the delivery vehicles, that we've not made for awkward points of conflict between the parking lot and the access way. So I'm confident by the time we get to a public hearing that we'll have this taken care of. But I do want to keep them as open items so we make sure that that gets done. You want to go to the next slide. This was a slide that they provided for me today, and I just thought it might help you see, because the aerial is underneath that, and you can see the blue line illustrates their new proposal. And you can see how far the existing parking lot comes to the north. But with striping, that's the other thing, they will be striping that access way, and there is a bump out up in the northwest corner of the site. It's kind of hard to see here. They're going to remove that as well. There's a lot of us that take this back way to get to Starbucks and so forth, and so it's a very awkward access as it is now. And so I think with the plans that they're proposing, that they will be cleaning this up and making it much safer. So the open items there, again, are just making sure we finalize the delivery access and ensure that that east-west lane is better defined going forward. So let's move on to the next slide. Just mentioning what the traffic delivery volume and schedule would be. They have mentioned to me that there will be an expectation of 7 trucks a day. When they make their presentation, they can confirm what the schedule would be. I know grocery stores are usually in the morning, but I'll let them respond to that when they make their presentation. And this plan illustrates where the pedestrian access is with all the red stars. I think they've done a really good job of responding to that request. Right now, there's no pedestrian access along that Harlem Avenue except on the west side. And as recently as the 14th, we had a tax increment financing public hearing, and there's some suggestions at that hearing to make sure we accommodate pedestrian and bicycle access better on Harlem Avenue. So I'm very pleased that we're going to be able to extend this from what we created with the outlot on south, and then when they come into phase 3, we'll take care of it going south from there. But if you have been out there, you'll realize that parkway really narrows down as it gets to the north side, so that sidewalk encroaches on their private property in some areas. Those are circled in red. And so what we'll do there is what we've done, for example, Dan just handled that in the Delta Sonic project. So where we encroach on private property, we just get a cross-access agreement to take care of that. The blue dashed line is just to indicate we were concerned about a bumper overhang on that sidewalk over there. So they are going to be installing wheel guards there to make sure that we have a true 6-foot wide sidewalk along that. And then on the south side, note that we, again, have a sidewalk coming up from Harlem Avenue into the center. Here it's on the opposite side because we have a very narrow island there that I don't want to reduce any further, a landscape island. So if you notice where that sidewalk is that runs from Harlem Avenue up into the center and then crosses that middle access way. And the green star, for you, Kayla, is pedestrian parking. So the only outstanding issue here, and they've already agreed to it, I think they actually sent it to me already, is to make sure we get a sidewalk and public access easement agreement. All right, next slide, please. Trash enclosures, if you did your site review or site visit, you'll notice it's pretty unsightly back there. There is a haphazard array of individual trash dumpsters or toters, and they are not in the required masonry trash enclosure. So they have provided a trash enclosure for the new constructed areas, and we're still working with them on how to accommodate trash enclosures back there on the existing inline stores. One of the problems is that there is a utility easement that runs right next to the building on the east side of that building. I had a conversation with the engineer just a couple hours ago. They're going to be able to fit 2 to 3 dumpsters actually in the northwest corner of that north lot that we were just talking about, and a couple more at the south end. I'm going to leave it to them to continue to work on that and then come back to us with a final proposal on how they're going to handle that. So it is a requirement of our code and something we put all our developments, we require it of all of our developments. So we'll leave that for them to remedy. Same with the mobile generator. There's a generator in the back. I have not seen anything yet on the screening of that, so I'm leaving that as an open item in terms of the screening of the mobile generator. Let's see. You can go to the next slide. That just shows you where the mobile generator is going to be located. And let's go to the next slide after that and talk about the mechanical systems. We've talked about this all the time with all of our developments. It's something we want to be careful to screen from public view. Right now, right now, for the views from Harlem Avenue, the RTUs are screened. They're not perfectly screened from the east to the west, but that is a pretty long view. If you were over at Centennial, I think that circle over by the bowling alley and Heartland Blood Bank, between those two, there are some views. But we want to do the best we can to screen those RTUs, especially when we're getting such beautiful architecture. Let's run through the next couple of slides, please. These slides are actually a companion piece to that plan with all the red arrows to show you where these perspectives were taken from. Let's get to the slide, Dan or Barb, where I know I've expressed to you the concern about the parapet on top of the grocer. And there's a red arrow on that. But this perspective is taken from southeast of the grocer and shooting northwest. My concern there is, and we've run across this actually in the outlot development, that you have a parapet which looks great from the front, but it's not a true parapet. It just wraps around the corner. And so the bracing for that is actually visible. You can see in the left-hand side of that drawing, I should put an arrow there, you'll see there's a fairly small, but you can see that I forget the term there. Mary, you mentioned it to me today. What do they call those, the bracing arms?
Oh, I said they reminded me of angle iron.
Yeah. So my concern is that, and maybe not even just from this perspective, but if we were to, could we go back up to the site plan that was a companion to these drawings that show the various perspectives? What my concern is the building that will be constructed to the south will be set back from this grocer. And so anyone sort of entering, exiting that grocery store, if they were to look up to the right, they're going to see this unfinished parapet, and that's my concern. We've had this situation actually in a couple projects. Let's see. I'm trying to think if I brought that picture down. I didn't bring the picture. But next time you are over at the outlot, and you'll notice there's like towers on each end. And actually, Brad Bradicek is on the phone right now. We worked with them on that to make sure that those were complete parapets, so that from every view around that building, it doesn't look like a fake movie set, for lack of a better word. Let's go down. Let's advance slides to the pictures, where we have a view looking east and a view looking west. That's after the various perspectives that they provided. And right now, we don't have that issue looking east. And they did confirm that the new facades will meet this same height or exceed that height. So we don't need to worry about it seeing any of the RTUs on the inline stores. And during their presentation, I'd like them to confirm that that's true. The concern, I think, is as we get further south on the junior boxes. You can see on that bottom photograph, that's the one looking west across from the bowling alley. So right now, they're very evident. So it's hard. I'm hard pressed to ask them to do much better than what their condition is now. But certainly from Harlem Avenue, I want to make sure that they are off screened from public view. All right. So that open item, obviously, the number 7 was just making sure that the RTUs are screened. Let's go to the next slide regarding outdoor sales display. This is a fairly minor issue. It's just something that they expressed to me, that the grocer, not unlike our existing grocers in town, they want to make sure they can do outdoor sales displays, and we accommodate that in our code. But we have a limit of April 15th to October 15th to accommodate that. They have been told that their grocer will want to do some winter displays, holiday displays. So we just want to make note of that. Hello? And we just want to make sure that we accommodate that in the PUD. All right, let's go to the next slide on parking. I heard somebody. Is everything okay?
Yeah, I don't know who that was.
Barb?
Yes, everything's okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, let's go to parking. Basically, and you've all heard me on my soapbox, I leave the parking requirements to the developer. They know best what they're going to need. If anything, I like to pull back on it because I don't want to see a parking. Every village you go into has a different parking ratio. There is no standard in the industry, really. There are some books on it where people and traffic engineers have really spent up the time doing nationwide studies of what the parking needs are. But in this case, I really want to rely on what the developer is telling us is a requirement by their future tenants. The development originally was approved with a 4.64 parking space per 1,000 square foot requirement. And that was overall, this phase as well as the third phase. I felt in looking at this, if you look at the diagram here, that it really didn't make sense to talk about parking for the grocer, for example, in the north parking lot. Now, they're going to all park right in front of the store. So we really needed to kind of look at these as separate parking fields between each of the access ways from Harlem Avenue. What's interesting is our code requires 6.5 spaces per 1,000, which is enormous. So I was trying to use the approval that the center got originally back in the 70s at 4.64 as my guide. Interestingly, the developer, Brixmore, their grocer is asking for 4.5 spaces. And so we just wanted to make sure that they were accommodated. And they are. If you look just at that south parking field, there's an overall ratio of 4.94 spaces per 1,000. So they certainly should be happy. Looking on the north parking field, there is 4.09 spaces. Now, that's less than the 4.6, but I'm not overly concerned. I think anyone out there has seen it does get busy around the outlots, but that north parking lot is rarely used. And so I'm not concerned, even with, I think there's going to be a loss of parking up there when we add a dumpster. So I'm not worried about it. And when we look at the overall ratio of both these fields together, we're back up to 4.76 spaces. So we're well within the original approval. But we will need to identify this as an exception going forward because of what the village code is. Okay, let's move now on to architecture. This is really the fun part, I think, of this project. Obviously, the center as it exists today has surpassed its time. It's very antiquated architecture, a lot of drive-its, certainly exhibiting some wear and tear. So we're very pleased with. Let's see, please mute your phone. Thank you. So let's go to the next slide. The architecture at the top is what is there now, the outlet. And again, we were very pleased with that architecture. And probably one of the biggest things we just wanted to make sure as we went to the renovation of the inline stores is that there was some consistency between the two. It doesn't have to be matchy-matchy, but we certainly want it to look cohesive, and I'm sure the developers want to make sure that it's identified as one center, the Tinley Park Center. So the new inline stores are beautiful, I think, very fresh, modern, I think natural and kind of earthy colors. And I do think that they are consistent with what we provided with the outlot in form and style, some of the fenestration, the building materials, and even I would say the colors. Let's progress in those slides so everyone can see the nice renderings that Brixmor provided. So as we progress to those, again, I'm just very impressed with the architecture that came out of this. I like the canopies that we had also in the outlot. And the use of materials, modern materials. They introduced me to what was, now I'm all of a sudden forgetting the name of it, but I'll remember in a second. There are the panels. Oh, I apologize, my mind is going. I'll think of it in a minute.
Stonewood phenolic.
Phenolic, there it is. Yeah, thanks. I hadn't heard of them before, the phenolic panels, but some of these are sort of like the hardy board that we're used to, cementatious materials. They have Lucabon around the doors that has sort of a metal look to it. They have the wood look to some of those. You can see in the inline tenants, some of it is horizontal and some of it's vertical. So they certainly have managed to create some nice shadow lines, nice articulation across the front, so it's not flat. Some nice details in the brickwork, soldier coursing, and some dentils. And I'm very pleased with how this worked out. And if you keep progressing in those slides to the soft good in the grocery store, and these two units have taken on their own branding architecture. They and yet I think they have provided some consistency with the inline stores. They're certainly in scale with their own architecture and unique. And listening to some of the commissioners today, I'm hearing that they like the way it looks as well. So the night view of the soft goods store is very interesting with the backlighting behind where you see the retail sign. So I think they did a very good job on that. Let's move down to the next slide, please, and you'll see some elevation. Per our code, and some of you were a part of these code changes where we began to legitimize our architectural guidelines and our building material requirements. Tinley Park has a great affinity for brick, and the way the code is written now, and it's sort of dependent on the size of the facade, but this center actually would have to meet a 25% brick requirement. What they've actually provided there, they've maintained the brick knee wall that's on the inline stores, but they've only provided 16% brick. The code would then allow the remaining 75% of the facade to be in alternate masonry material, but we are fairly limited in what we consider approved alternate masonry material, and that would be precast concrete, and there's only 13% of that. Then the remaining balance of the facade, we do allow 15% to be in alternate materials that are often used in other developments for accents, like the fiber cementatious, like hardy board or metal, phenolic panels or phenolic, I'm hoping I'm saying that right, ephes. And in this case, they've also used tile. But because of the scale of those junior boxes, they're quite large. They use a lot of those, what I would call alternate materials, and so that comprises 71%. Now, the materials in and of themselves are not prohibited. We do have a prohibited list, and they are not prohibited, but they are certainly occupying more of the facade than what we normally have seen. But honestly, I think the result is beautiful. I don't have a concern about it. We're lucky this is a PUD, so we're not setting a precedent. So if the board is supportive of the choices they have made in building materials, we can make that part of the PUD. let's move down on this slide. And unfortunately, you know how we usually bring in a building material board for you to touch and feel. We don't have that for you tonight. Dan was the wonderful photographer that put this together for me. But it gives you an idea of the colors and materials for the inline stores. And then if we progress down in slides, let's go down a couple. You'll see the metal and the lime green on the grocer. Now, the one thing I have not seen, and I meant to check with you, Dan, today, have we received anything on the soft good building materials, Dan?
I don't think so. We received.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything.
Received some, but we received
the
something
red or
else,
anything.
but
I
I
did
think it
ask-
was more for the grocer. It didn't look like.
Pardon?
It looked like we received some more for the grocer, but I don't think we received anything for the soft goods.
Okay. So when the developers give their presentation, they can talk about that, and then we can certainly make sure that the building materials are here for the commission's review during the public hearing. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything on the previous slide. We went fairly quickly. If you want to go back up 2 slides, please, just so I make sure I'm being thorough here. You'll see the top is a kind of a 3D view. I like that. I know it's small, but hopefully you can see it. It sort of gives you a sense of how the two lines, the inline stores and the junior boxes, kind of meld together. It's kind of nice that the junior boxes are kind of set back so they can become kind of their own architecture and area. And then the rear of the facade is precast concrete wall panels, which does meet our code requirement. And the color is going to match the inline stores, the rear of the inline stores. And this area really isn't very visible. And then the bottom elevations are just on the south by the grocer and south of the inline tenants. So it's nice that it wraps around. One of my concerns is that, I don't want to see the center just stop at the front. You want to carry that architecture around the side. So that's what you can see there on the south elevation. So now, I don't know, Dan, if you're pushing the slides forward. Let's go one past the samples for the grocer, the building material for the grocer. This I didn't put in the staff report, and I was remiss in not doing that because I think it's very cool what they have done here. Again, I had wanted to make sure that the architecture wraps around the sides, and that north facade of the inline stores is actually very visible. Those of us that make their way to Starbucks every morning down this path, that wall is very vacant and very plain. And what they have stated here is that they will have some sort of painted mural, and they don't know exactly what it would be. I did suggest that they think about our new brand for Music is in Our DNA, and so I'll be excited to see what they come up there, and we can put them in touch with our marketing department and maybe do something there that helps bring home our brand for the village. So I thought that was very cool. So this open item is just about the building materials, making sure that you're all supportive of what they're presenting. And if you are, then we will identify that as an exception and include it as part of the PUD. Let's move on now to lighting. And I'm going to give you a quiz. If you can read all the little numbers in the photometric plan, you'll win a prize. Basically, if anyone's ever read a photometric plan, it just reads the light levels of foot candles emanating from a light standard. The only thing that's important about this is we did adopt a new lighting code within the past year or two. And so we were very much more specific about what the light levels can be at the edges. Now, when we get into commercial districts like this, I'm less concerned. We're along Harlem Avenue. Certainly don't want any off-site glare, and with the light standard that they're proposing, there won't be. But the light standards, the ones they are proposing, there are some existing, and then they have a couple that they'll have to add, and they certainly don't want to replace all the ones that are out there now. Our code limited our height at 25 feet, and they are proposing 40. The benefit of that is we're going to have less light standards if you can go taller, and hopefully have more of an even spread as you look across at night. You don't want to have hot areas and low areas. It seems evident to me that the grocer is going to have the brighter parking field outside their store, but there is no excessive deviation of the photometric or the light candle reads across that. So the open item with respect to lighting is just that we need to recognize the height variation as part of that. So let's move on next to landscaping. And we've had a bit back and forth. I received a plan as late as today. I do appreciate Brixmoor's responsiveness. Every time we've come up with an issue, they've been very responsive in getting that back to us. I think what's probably most impressive, if you drive along that corridor now, and there was a picture in your staff report, I didn't put it here, but it's pretty bleak along Harlem Avenue. And I would love to bury the ComEd poles along there, but absent doing that, we need to do what we can to kind of soften that edge and all the parking, because the west line of parking remains as it is now, which is facing towards Harlem Avenue. But they have greened it up quite considerably, including the landscape islands. What I'm most happy about is that they will be irrigating every place you see green, it will be irrigated. And they're putting some, what are they called, automatic couplers in the beds along the foundation, so even the potted plants will be kept alive with irrigation. So that's one of the saddest things I've seen, where you have a development come in, it looks great in the first year, and then after that it falls apart because they're not being properly maintained. So I'm very excited that they've agreed to irrigate all of this. I want to kind of bring your attention to, let's go to the next slide, if you would please, to the foundation. And we had some renovations going back between staff and the developer, because we wanted to make sure that that sidewalk was wide enough to accommodate easy access across and kind of take on that nice kind of downtown feel or lifestyle feel, but we wanted to green it up as well. So as one of the first plans that they had provided did not have any of this landscaping that we're seeing now. So I'm very pleased to see them add the landscape beds, which will have a curb on them. And I just want to make sure, Brixmore, that we have that curb noted on some plan somewhere, because we want to contain the mulch and the planting area. And then areas where the foundation planning would interfere with doorways or the ability for them to be flexible with future tenants, they put potted plants. So I think it'll be very nice when it's finished. The other requirement by our code is, completely screening that rear area, and there is a fence there now. There are portions of it that are in very good conditions, and there are other portions that are less so. We had a talk early on with Brixmore, and they were very agreeable to making sure that that fence is in good condition and good repair. So we'll just make that a part of the PUD as we go forward. All right, let's move on to signs. And this is another one I'm very excited about. I can't wait to get rid of that ugly sign. So there's a very tall, ugly sign that's out there now, and they've designed a beautiful ground-mounted sign. It is beyond our code, but in a center of this size, I think it's warranted. They're looking for a 20-foot ground-mounted sign where 10-foot is our limit. We've seen this already right across the street, so there is some precedence for this. So the size isn't, the height is an issue, and also the size. I did not mention that in the report. I missed that. The 120 feet is really the maximum size that you can have on a sign. And I'm trying to remember what this, excuse me, what the sign turned out to be. I can't read the numbers, but it is beyond 120. So I think it's in scale. I like the vertical band on the left-hand side. That counts as a sign because it's got its name on it. All the panels will be the same color. If you recall, that was part of our new sign ordinance to make sure that it didn't look like, you know, a rainbow with every back panel a different color. So this will be very elegant, I think, and a very attractive, streamlined sign. And then right now there's also two other smaller ground signs on the north and south side, and they actually meet code right now at 10 feet, and they're proposing the new signs just so they all match in design to be 10 feet as well. So that's a really nice improvement. Let's go to the next slide. The other issue related to sign is just the setback, and they really don't have a lot of options here. One of the 10-foot high signs is fine, and it's set back 10 feet, but the 20-foot sign and the other sign at the, I think it's at the south end, do not meet the 10-foot, and they really can't. So we need to recognize that as an exception and put that into the PUD. All right, engineering and fire, we were able to resolve all their issues. And then the last slide, we can just summarize quickly what outstanding issues are, and then we'll go on to a presentation from the developer. So as we said in the beginning, we just need to recognize that they are not meeting the 26-foot aisle width throughout the parking field. I'm fine with this, and we've done this before. Second one is I still want to work with the developer to make sure we have the best layout for that north parking lot and that we have the delivery route down and making sure we're not getting any wheel drag on any landscape area. So that takes care of 2 and 3. The fourth one we've already handled. They have submitted a public access easement agreement. The fifth is still open and something we need to work on. I understand that they have some concern about the utility easement back there, but we really need to get those trash enclosures into, or dumpster, we need to get the dumpsters into approved trash enclosures in some way. Screening of the generator, I need to hear from them what they're going to do about that. Number 7 is still a concern of mine. I want to be confident that all rooftop mechanical units are not visible. So they will, they'll probably be ready to discuss that when they make their presentation. No problem with number 8. No problem with number 9. If you all are okay there, I think the parking ratio that they're providing will meet their needs without over-parking the site. Number 10 is the actual building materials that they're providing for the center. You know, we have an architect on our commission, so I'm anxious to hear from Eduardo on how he feels about the quality of these building materials. Number 11 is just the lighting standards. Again, they're just meeting the standards that are out there. Number 12 is just making sure that that fence is in good repair. And I want to make sure that the irrigation of all the planting beds is part of the special use approval, so we can make sure that the landscaping looks good from forevermore. 13th, we just talked about with the ground signs. Again, staff supports the request beyond code. And as always, we want to condition our approvals on final engineering. So, Chairman, that's my presentation. I'm sorry it was long. Hopefully you all are still awake.
This is Chairman Gray. No, it was very thorough, Paula. We appreciate your diligence. Thank you for your presentation. I understand the developer is here and has a presentation as well. If the developer would please introduce themselves at this time and then begin their presentation.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This is Andy Balzer. I'm Director of Redevelopment with Brixmore Property Group. You know, we're excited to present this redevelopment plan to you this evening. But first, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Paula and all of the effort that she's put in, all the long hours and all of the planning that she has done most recently here over the last couple of weeks, but then those weeks have been over the last few months. So this has been a long time coming, and she has put in a lot of work and along with her staff. So I just wanted to share our appreciation for everything that she's done, and obviously that presentation was indicative of the amount of work that she's put into it. So thank you. So for the benefit of the commission and for anybody maybe that might be unfamiliar with Brixmor, Brixmor Property Group, we're a publicly traded REIT. We invest in open-air shopping centers, primarily grocery-anchored shopping centers. We own 400 centers across the country that comprise of more than 70 million square feet of space. We want to own quality shopping centers, and we will make investments in great real estate. And we view Tinley Park Plaza as great real estate, and it's an asset that we believe in and intend to own for a long time. So if you can advance my slide. I have some animations in here that might be a little bit tough with the lag, so bear with me. So just a little bit of history about Tinley Park Plaza, and Paula touched on some of this, and I don't need to share with you, obviously, that the center struggled for many years. And it's really struggled due to a lack of a prominent anchor tenant. There's been many different plans over the years, many that predate me, that have been pursued for redevelopment options, but to no avail. Most recently, we marketed a proactive redevelopment plan that we were focusing on trying to attract restaurants to the center to try to create a restaurant-centric redevelopment. We had positive feedback on it, had some preliminary interest, but the concern was that there really wasn't a prominent national anchor that's going to be there for a significant amount of time to be able to help drive traffic, for the coming years, and really hindered us from gaining any traction on that kind of project. But fortunately, we've established a relationship with this grocer who's going to anchor this redevelopment and has really kind of driven us and gotten us to this point. So if you want to advance the slide. So Paula did a great job in detailing the project, so I'm just going to try to add a little bit of color to the details, and then we'll open it up for questions. I will also try to address some of the things that she wanted us to hit in her presentation. If I miss anything, then obviously please ask questions. So as Paula indicated, the first phase was really just kind of the first opportunity to try to make some improvements here, where we demoed some of that in inline retail and built the out parcel. But if you can advance. But now, we're really undertaking the major step in transforming the center into a Class A destination, which we really believe is going to attract new tenants from outside of the market and bring us more opportunities here at the center. Advance. So the section that's going to be highlighted here is the area that is being demoed, just to try to define that 80,000 square feet that's being demoed. It is that area that, for lack of a better term, kind of snouts out where the famous footwear is, and then goes right there to the northern wall of Waltz. Go ahead and advance the slide. So our redevelopment effort is really driven by the 38,000 square foot. Advance the other way.
I think that's all we had on it.
Yeah, that's all we got.
Yeah, that was the only, it was just those slides.
No. All right, something
Are
got
there many more
lost,
slides?
but yeah, there was more.
That's all I got today.
Cut off. Okay. Well, you know what? I'll still run through it, without visuals, but we can still. So our redevelopment effort is driven by the 38,000 square foot grocer, and the one thing that I can say regarding the grocer is that it's a national brand that will operate a traditional full line grocery store like what you'd see at Mariano's, but will have forward thinking technology. Some additional color on the regarding the grocers, that we had commissioned an independent grocery study to understand what the impact is to our development. The study indicated that more than 50% of the store's volume will actually come from outside of the trade area or outside of the village of Tinley Park. So it's this expanded trade area that we believe will attract other retailers in wanting to locate here. So our other anchors, the 25,000 square foot soft goods retailer that was looking to exit the Tinley Park market, but has reconsidered based on our redevelopment plans, and that now that we have a grocery anchor that is committed for long term. A couple of other things that I was going to touch on that I had some additional, views was that the other two dramatic, elements to this was the facades. We really look at this as having the opportunity to be a Class A shopping center, and we did not want to cut corners when it came to trying to make that curb appeal or that impact to the market. And so, as Paula stated, we looked at those facades, we looked at the materials. We knew what your guys' code was, but what we were really looking for was, we've got a ton of linear footage there, and if we were to not break it up in different materials, it would become monotonous. So we wanted to have a breakup of materials, a breakup of articulations, and to be able to provide something that has, some real impact. And also, as Paula stated, the goal was to try to have it stay consistent with the architectural style of the out parcel, because we do want this to be a cohesive development. And then, kind of lastly, the other thing we looked at was, from the landscaping. Landscaping can make a significant impact to the impression of the center. We really did not spare any expense on the landscaping. I think that, in this process that what we worked with Paula and with staff, anything that we, looked at, like some of the foundational plantings that that you guys might have wanted along the small shop space. The concern is that we were, those spaces combine, they get broken up, and the front doors kind of move, and we just need some flexibility there. The grocer and the soft goods retailer are there for long term, so foundational plantings, those doors aren't going to shift. And thankfully, we were able to get the grocer to sign off on the location of the foundational planting, so it was a win-win. What I will do here is, this is kind of, I conclude some of, my remarks, is address some of the comments that, Paula, that you made. One of them was regarding the parking and the parking ratio. We did early on have the grocer came in initially with a 4.5 to 1 ratio requirement. We actually got them to relax it and said that we were looking at a 4 to 1 ratio, that they were just concerned, or they only want to make sure that we are able to provide a 4 to 1 in the overall shopping center. So as it relates to parking, we still are overparked from at least what this grocer is looking at is the go forward look for retail and for what their needs are. The parapet for the small shop space, we're actually going to tie right in. From what's there today, it's an overhang facade. We're going to tear that facade back and then build off of that wall. So that parapet that's there, that's already screening the RTUs on those small shops, we're going to work off of that. So the screening that you see today is going to be the screening that we're going to work from. So there's not an alteration there. And then regarding the mobile generator screening, the one comment relative to that is that, that's a slab and a location for a mobile generator that is really going to only be used for, emergency circumstance, and would be in a location for such a short period of time, and would just at least, kind of ask for relief of wanting to actually screen that area, only because of the temporary nature of it. But relative to the screening of the other dumpsters, we don't want to, we want to screen every dumpster that's possible that's back there, and we're trying to find some ways to be able to get those dumpsters in, screened. But the challenge that we're having is those utilities and the inability to, dig foundations into those utility easements. We have, as Paul already indicated, I think we have a couple of locations at the north end of the small shops where we're going to be able to enclose and put some, and then also at we'll call it the rear of the southern end of the small shops, actually right behind that southernmost tenant that's in view right now, that we would also put an enclosure where there's not an easement. I do believe, and that there might only be a couple of others that would be floating. The only concern would be is that if we move those, that the tenants that are there would have to walk a considerable distance to drop their trash. But nonetheless, we obviously we want to make the level of investment here to make this a Class A center, whether that's in the front or whether that's in the rear. We don't want the back of house to be, non-representative of what we're doing in the front. So we will obviously work on trying to have that as clean and presentable as possible. In fact, the grocer, we actually redesigned the building, brought the rear wall in 10 feet in order to accommodate the enclosures there and to be able to put the trash enclosures and things like that there. We unfortunately can't redesign the multi-tenant space in order to be able to do the same. And then, any redevelopment in the future, anything that would be phase 3, that would be, from, the Waltz on over, we would obviously try to make those same accommodations of providing those trash enclosures. So with that, I will open it up for questions. And Paula, if I did not address any of the things that you wanted me to address, please ask me. And I apologize for half of my slides somehow not getting uploaded. So apologies for that.
No, that must be my technological vacancy here, but I just went back and looked at what was sent to me, and there are other slides in there, and all I did was copy and paste them in the back of mine, but I must have done something wrong. So certainly for the public hearing, we get that right. I'll have Dan help me, and I'm sure it'll be done right if Dan does it. Thank you for everything you said there, and my only, you started to speak about it, and I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. I'm still concerned about the parapet, the visibility of the back of those parapets on the junior boxes. Can you address that, please?
Yeah. So, and I'm going to defer some to Chris Ludwig with Wolpert from an architectural perspective. But one of the things that we want to try to do is to try to find a something that makes sense. I don't know if it's going to be if we can provide a different material, if there's a way to have a different color. We're willing to try and find a solution. The one thing that is different from the multi-tenant building or the outlot building, and the ability to kind of not have a quote-unquote parapet is we're dealing with, anchor tenant facades, not just the corner element of a multi-tenant building. So when you deal with an anchor tenant facade that's that large in nature, trying to completely encase it, it becomes its own structure with its own roof system and drainage and things like that. And so we'd like to try to find something that appeals to you to soften that if it's coloring or whatnot. But I think it'd be difficult to redesign the building for another large structure up there. And Chris, I can't remember what the linear footage was, but it's a massive amount of area that we would have to create its own structure.
All right. Well, we can work on. We've got time before the public hearing, and we can kind of work that through. Also, do you know the delivery schedule of your vehicles for the grocer?
the actual schedule, what they've told us is that the schedule will accommodate any local ordinances, but they can't, indicate exactly when the trucks will be scheduled. They're trying to ask their operations, but obviously for most grocers, most deliveries are going to be early. But if you have any local ordinances that they have to abide by, they will abide by any local ordinance.
Okay, good. And then we'll still need the soft goods building materials. I'm looking at the aerial that's really nice, or the perspective that the commission can't see right now. And it just looks like behind the red is a yellow now, which is not what you had originally proposed. So maybe it's an error in this perspective, but I'd like to see the building materials on the soft goods, please.
Absolutely. I apologize for those not being there. I thought that they were.
No worries, no worries. And I didn't realize the generator wasn't permanently there, so that's fine. And I think that's the only outstanding items I have. So, Chairman, you could turn it over to the commission if you wish.
Sure. This is Chairman Gray. Thank you, Paula, and thank you, Andy, for your presentation. At this time, I will ask for comments from our commissioners. And commissioners, please address the open items. And I will begin with Commissioner Gatto.
This is Commissioner Gatto. So I have a couple things. I agree with the dumpsters being enclosed. I'd really like to see that being enclosed. We don't want anything exposed in the back, especially because it's visible from Hobby Lobby and when you come around the corner there. Also, the sign I'm completely okay with, even though it's a little bit bigger than what we allow. I'm okay with it with being the size of that plaza. I think the plan, it looks amazing compared to what is going on over there right now. So I'm very excited to see this development happen. And then also I agree with the screening from the HVAC on top. I would like to see so it's not visible from the street view. And that's all I have.
Okay. Excellent, Commissioner Gatto. At this time, I'll ask Commissioner Gaskell for any comments. Commissioner Gaskell, are you there?
I'm sorry, this is on and off with the mute. Yeah, my only problem with the whole plan is the parking. I'm not a big fan of the perpendicular parking in front of the buildings, just because I don't think it's that safe. I think it's just going to create a lot more activity up close to the buildings. And aside from that, it's going to cause a lot of restriction to the fire department. If they need to respond to that area, that all those cars parked along the front of the buildings, there's going to be a big restriction. That's my problem.
Okay. Yes. Commissioner Gaskell, are those are all your comments, correct?
The perpendicular parking is my only objection.
Okay. Noted. And could everybody mute their phones? This is Chairman Gray. I think somebody's pouring a glass of water or something. At this time, I'll ask for comments from Commissioner Aitchison.
This is Commissioner Aitchison. So just going down the open items, I don't take any exception to reducing the aisle width from 26 feet to 24 feet, especially given the fact that 24-foot aisles have been previously approved and there has not been an issue and it hasn't proven problematic. I would like to see all of the dumpsters enclosed. So I'm in agreement with that needs to happen. I also don't like the parapets or the mechanical units being exposed or visible from public view on top. I just feel like this development is well needed and it's going to be so beautiful, and those would dampen the overall view of the development. I take no exceptions to changing the sign. I feel like it fits the area as well as the development. I feel like those are my main comments.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Aitchison. Commissioner Manny, Any comments at this time?
Yes, I want to say this proposed development, it's exciting and it looks good. Material-wise, it's going to be very intriguing. It's going to, make people, go there, just for the architecture itself. My comments regarding for the trash dumpsters, currently they are like strewn about, so I think something should be done, some type of resolution to keep them in check, so they could so even that service alleyway could function properly, and also the mechanical units. You're going to have this great facade and new redevelopment, and those RTUs on top, would be kind of, will be the eyesore, so you have this beautiful, new construction here, but then, again, the RTUs will be an eyesore. So have you guys thought about using some type of, roof screen, to screen the RTUs? Something that you could, look into, solve, or, come to a solution for that. But besides that, I think it's gonna be great.
Okay, excellent. Commissioner West, any comments at this time?
Yeah, I just want to thank the staff for a really, really thorough presentation. Being newer to the committee, I sometimes don't have the historic knowledge, but in this instance, I felt I was able to really see how the city and the developers work together to make something good for the community. So thank you for a great presentation, and I think all the points that I would make have been made probably better by others previously.
Okay, excellent, Commissioner West. Commissioner Vick, any comments?
Yeah, just a couple here. One, I just want to echo some of the previous commissioners, just about the screening of those rooftop units there. There's shopping along the backside of that, of where this is going to be, of course, and there's other businesses and a lot of, it's just way too visible. Hopefully some sort of screening can be figured out for the backside of this, because the front side definitely looks nice, and I think it's going to be a great addition and a well-needed update for that area over there. When it comes down to the lighting, for the lighting standards there, the additional height on those, there's not a lot of, we're not talking about an area that even butts up to residential, which is good. And we're talking about the Harlem Avenue side, and if there's still not a lot of bleed or glare onto the roadway from those higher standards, I don't think it should be a big issue by allowing that, that higher, that 40-foot height pole, especially, limited, which means since we're limiting light standards, of course, then it means that we have a few more parking spots. I don't have a problem with any of the parking issues either. I think we'll be just fine with that going on. No problems with the signs at all. I think it's going to look really good. All the extra planting and stuff like that will be very good as well. That's what I got.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Vick. This is Chairman Gray. I have a few comments. At first, I'd like to say, and kind of echo what the commissioners have been saying, the site plan looks amazing. And what I like to hear is that you said the two anchors are basically here long term, the grocer and the soft sales building. And so I appreciate that. It does need a facelift for sure. And you mentioned curb appeal, Andy, and the plans you've provided to the village absolutely deliver on curb appeal. Now, one of my concerns is that area where it's going to be expanded from 25 feet to 60 feet for the turning radius. I did see the updated plans that staff presented. I did like the fact that they did push that west island towards the east. From what I saw on the presentation today, it looks like you lose like 4 parking spaces, but I think that's an improvement for the through traffic that you don't have an island kind of jutting out there. I also really am concerned because I do go to the Potbellies there, and my wife goes to the Starbucks. That area gets a lot of traffic, you mentioned the seven deliveries a day, probably in the morning, and I think you're right, especially with the grocery stores, probably not going to be late. But I do know that little passageway that gets behind the buildings there between Blaze Pizza and Potbelly's, that gets a lot of traffic. I know you guys, it was stated that there was a traffic person here. I'm not sure if a traffic study was done in terms of looking at what that traffic would do and what types of trucks will be making these deliveries and how that will impact. One of my concerns is I don't mind widening that to 60 feet because it's tearing up the curb as it stands, so I think that's a good idea. I just get worried that if you get 60 feet, you may have some or drivers who don't pay attention and think, oh, it's so big, I can drive anywhere. So I do like what I saw on the presentation. It looked like there was white striping. I would request that be maintained so that it doesn't fade, where people think it's kind of just a one big 60-foot wide 2-lane road. But it's something for the turning access and turning radius of these larger trucks for that make deliveries to the grocer. But that's just some things to consider for that area, because I think it could be a potential issue for kind of safety. Yeah, and the staff is finding it there. Yeah, so you can see the east-west lanes, and then I'm assuming, and I thought it was in one of the other slides, where that it's not crosshatch, but those vertical slants are your striping. And I like that, but I think you're going to have to make sure that over time, with people driving on it and friction and snow plows and even sun beating on it, it doesn't fade so much that people just, you give them a wider area to drive on, and they take the whole road. So, but just be cognizant. And is there anybody with the traffic with your staff that did any traffic study on that particular area, Andy?
Oh, if that's to us. So the traffic study was more along the lines of the truck study and the truck routes. And so we originally had received from the grocer the truck route of coming in off of 159th Street and then coming and traversing the rear. There was concern about the inability for those trucks to be able to turn without coming into ongoing traffic. They wanted some kind of traffic control measures in order to be able to approve the site. We were even at a point where they weren't going to approve the site. We said that that's not our property. We have an inability, at least in a short period of time, to be able to come to a potential agreement. We then obviously learned that Waltz has their current truck routes is the route that we're discussing here. I would imagine that Waltz volume is not going to be near the volume that the new grocer is going to be, so the amount of traffic is probably less. But I think that the same trucks are at least traversing there today. I'm not aware of any major issues relative to the safety. If there is, and there's something we need to address, then bring it to our attention. But would agree with, pulling back the one stall and the one landscaped island in order to not have that, kind of be out in the path of traffic, in that area that's circled there right now. So that's the extent of the traffic study. And what I will say for the grocer, the new traffic study, or the new truck route study, which we have provided it to Paula, and we can bring it up at the next meeting, does show, and the reason why we have to bring this back is so that those trucks do not come into oncoming traffic that are the westbound traffic. So that's why we had to bring it back, so those trucks can actually traverse and completely go around that island without coming into ongoing traffic.
No, and I concur with that, Andy. Those trucks, if it's too small, they're hopping curbs or they're going into the other lane. Obviously, you could tell by the pictures that were provided during today's presentation by the staff that that landscape area is getting beat up there. So it makes more sense just to peel that back and give that appropriate turning radius so that as you stated, the trucks aren't going into the ongoing traffic, in addition to not, hopping these curbs. So, and I know this shows staff's recommendation up on the screen right now, and I would just recommend, continuing that discussion with staff until, both parties are satisfied, or a safe route that should be, for the most part, hopefully, good for both truck traffic as well as the normal vehicular traffic, because it is kind of like the doorway to that Burlington Coat Factory and even Menards if you're coming from that side as well. So I know from use of going to that plaza quite a bit that is a pretty well trafficked street there, or roadway. Okay, well, just continue those discussions with staff. I think that's the recommendation does look like it's a step in the right direction, and I do think your overall design, where you were talking about the snout in that area that got removed, I think you guys did an excellent job in streamlining that traffic flow on the along the facade side of phase 2 and phase 3. So I think it's a big improvement from a lot of these awkward access points in the existing plaza. So kudos on that.
Thank you. And if I
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, if I can add, the goal was obviously, and the goal is to, we're going to have small little step backs in order to ultimately kind of get in line with what is now the tile shop and all of those. So the goal was to try and obviously kind of start to get those to where it looks like it was kind of intended to be that full inline center.
Okay, good. In addition, some of the... Go ahead. Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to address Commissioner Gaskell's concern, and I just wanted him to know that all these plans are reviewed by the fire department. And so I just went back to make sure they have approved and have no outstanding issues on the site plan that's presented.
Well, shame on them. Okay.
Okay, this is Chairman Gray. I'll go back to some of my comments. I do concur with, I thought staff, Paula, you did an excellent job on the RTUs, the rooftop units, and I do agree. You do want to avoid at all costs it looking like some sort of movie facade. So if there's any way to screen it, as Commissioner Manny was mentioning, or have it so it's the angles of the building, appropriately hide it from all angles. That's something to continue to work on. Also, I concur with Commissioners Aitchison and Gatto, who mentioned the dumpsters and screening. It does sound like there's a challenge there with the utilities. If you can't dig due to existing utilities into, so you can't get your foundations. But I would, work with staff on trying to potentially, and work with your own team to potentially find an innovative solution for that. But I know the business is here. You have to screen the dumpsters. So that should be something that you'll be able to find some reason or find some solution to that's reasonable. With that, I do want to say I thought the renovation for phase 1 with the Blaze pizza and whatnot, that looks great. So if that's just a little bit of a taste of what the rest of this is going to look like and what we've seen here today, I'm very excited too. I think we appreciate your interest in redeveloping Tinley Park, especially this plaza. So with that, and a couple things. I don't have a problem with the parking ratio. Paul, I think you did a good job in your research, and I do agree with your reasoning, staff's reasoning, that in terms of the lower, the 4.5, and it's still, I guess it was 4.6. So missing a little spaces on that north end, I don't think overall will hurt the functionality of the plaza. And in today's day and age, where you have a lot of people buying online, I think it's probably a reasonable multiple. And I don't have a problem with the signs. You know, I know typically they're limited in terms of what particular part of the season, but I can understand if there's holiday deals and whatnot that they want to advertise. The one thing I would mention is that wherever you put your signs, or wherever they would put their signs, rather, that it doesn't impede the walkways, especially during the winter, you know, where sometimes you have snow and salted areas that you kind of have to navigate, just as long as it doesn't impede in, you know, the people's ability to use the sidewalk so they're not walking in the street. I'm totally for it. I don't have a problem with the signs. With that, those are my comments, and I do appreciate your time, Andy, and your team here today. Staff, is there any questions, further questions that you have at this time that hadn't been brought up by the commissioners?
No, I appreciate all the commissioners. It was a lot of work to go through the staff report, and they all gave it a lot of thought and time, so I appreciate that. I just want you to know we're moving towards a public hearing, and it is scheduled right now for August 6th, but we do have, we have laid out a whole schedule with Brixmor, and we have some latitude on that date, but right now the public hearing notice is out for the 6th, and that will most likely be our public hearing night.
Okay. Excellent. So at this time, I'll move on to the good of the order. Staff, do you have any communications at this time?
I don't think we have much.
I don't. What is it? Oh, I'm
Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
Dan?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mentioned that at the beginning. We have no communications, and there's no public hearing notices. And I think the one item, though, Chairman, was we need to make sure that we note public comment. So I can't see there if there's anybody there in the room. Dan and Barb?
There's not.
There's nobody. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to, right afterwards, I was going to move to if there was any comments from the public. So hearing that there is none, I guess we'll move on. But Andy, again, I guess you'll be talking with Paula and the staff, but tentatively the public hearing will be August 6th, 2020. So staff, please keep Brixmor updated with the finalized public hearing date. With that, if there's nothing further, I would entertain a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting. Do I have movement? So I heard Commissioner Gatto make a movement. Do I have a second?
This is Commissioner Aitchison. I second that motion.
Okay. This is Chairman Gray. Motion made by Commissioner Gatto, seconded by Commissioner Aitchison. I will take a voice vote. Anyone opposed? Okay. Hearing no opposition, this motion is carried. This meeting is adjourned at 8:34 p.m.